I'll just kick it off right now. I just want to talk about some movies that I watched this year for the first time that had nothing to do with the podcast, just on my own, but that I absolutely loved. And the first one ties into what we were just talking about because, the first one on my list is Tenet. And I thought it was a great movie. We won't go into any spoilers because not everyone here has seen it.
Yeah, that's right.
That will have changed by the time this comes out, since we'll be getting it next week. But
that's true.
But I think that one was just like more of the experience. We actually ended up going with Matt. We took our respective cars and went to the drive-in and parked next to each other. And I think it was just like, that was the closest feeling that we had to being back in a theater. And I was like, I can't really understand everything, but I just love that I'm here. Like,
true.
It just feels so good to be here.
The fact that we were doing it was better than the actual thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like I really don't know how I feel about the movie.
Yeah.
It's like being a kid at like a theme park for the first time. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I don't totally understand what's happening here.
I don't get this, but this is great. So yeah, that would be the first one on my list. Another first for me this year was the Talking Heads Stop Making Sense movie about their like live concert. That just like floored me. That was awesome. I don't know how I'd gone that long without seeing it.
Yeah, I need to check it out.
No, I need to. Yeah, now you're making us
feel bad. I had a blast
at
that one. Like I immediately was like, "Can I get this vinyl?" Like it was awesome. If you see that photo of David Byrne with like the big huge suit, the big shoulders, like that's from this concert. So that was super cool. Let's see what else is on my list. Oh, okay. I think I might have a new favorite rom-com or top 3 rom-com and a new favorite horror movie. And the first one is Notting Hill.
The fame thing isn't really real, And don't forget, I'm also just a girl standing in front of a boy, asking him to love her.
Which I had put off forever. I think I treated it kind of like Titanic, like, well, everybody likes it, so I'm not going to watch it just on principle. But then I watched, I'm like, oh, it's actually really good. I love Notting Hill. Like, I realize I'm way late to the game on this, but I thought Notting Hill was wonderful. We were watching The Undoing. We're like, why is Hugh Grant so charming? Like, oh, now I know. Like, it was in Notting Hill. That's exactly what it was.
You've begun your grantification.
Yes, exactly. It just started.
Grantrification. Grantrification.
Grantrification, yes. I'm going to work it into Paddington at some point. I'm excited to watch those.
Yeah.
And then my last one, I think my new favorite horror movie, flat out, is The Thing. That took me by surprise. Like, it was a Halloween time. Like, well, let's just watch stuff. We watched Poltergeist, which I liked. I saw that for the first time. Nightmare on Elm Street for the first time. Friday the 13th. Like, I watched all these for the first time, but The Thing just was an immediate like, oh, this is my new favorite horror movie. I loved it so much. It might be because my hair and beard look a lot like Kurt Russell's right now. I'm like, oh yeah, that kind of looks like me. That's like a weirdly long hair that's not long. It's like a medium weird length. But I loved The Thing. I thought that was wonderful. And yeah, I'd say those are probably my 4 that weren't for the podcast that I really enjoyed this year. Matt, do you kind of want to go over some of yours that you saw this year?
Yeah. So for those of you I guess we just posted our schedule and you can kind of see what we went through earlier this year. You can also listen to our little pods and listen to some of those earlier rounds. And you'll notice that in rounds 1 through 3, we kind of were heavily influenced by Oscar selections. We tried to cram in some movies that were up for nominations, and some that didn't. There were a few that didn't make the cut into our podcast. And one of those was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I'm going to take, this is a hot take here, but it's my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie.
Whoa.
I loved it.
That's a hot take.
I can't even, I haven't enjoyed a Tarantino movie the way I enjoyed this one. In so many ways, but to me, it was just a lot of fun. I just thought it was so cool. I know there was like tons of footage of Brad Pitt driving his car around LA, probably too much, but I didn't care. And
can you ever have too much?
I would say I'd take 3 hours of that. Give me the director's cut. Let me just watch Brad drive around, work on roofs with his shirt off. Like, give me that cut.
Exactly. So, I mean, that was a huge surprise for me. Second one was Onward, Disney Pixar. And again, for whatever reason, it's funny that 2020 has been such a bad year because aesthetically with movies and how like the impressions that they've had on me has been like elevated, and not because of necessarily 2020. Like I saw both of those before coronavirus. So they're not pandemic related, but I watched Onward, and I'm willing to admit that in my older age, I have allowed myself to get more emotional in movies without shame. Like,
welcome to the club.
I don't really care anymore. I haven't cared for a while, but it is still unique for me to be like emotionally overwhelmed by something. And part of it had to do with like my wife lost a parent at a young age, but like Onward was like just such an emotionally like tsunami. And it was funny because like we got out of the movie, and typically you just like start talking about your favorite parts, start talking about it. And we were actually on a road trip home when we saw it. So we like saw the movie, got in the car, and it took us like 45 minutes in silence before we tried to talk about it. And then my wife was just sobbing talking about it. So it was just like, it's such an emotional movie. The universe they built was so cool and so sweet. And like, I just want to go back to it. And every time I rewatch it, it's like my kids love it. So every time I rewatch it, I'm just like reminded about like, I want to see like 10 of these movies, and we might only get one because like it didn't do well in the box office, obviously, because of the circumstances. I think maybe streaming saved it, but it's too soon to tell. But I really loved that movie. The third one was Da 5 Bloods, and I saw that 2 weeks before Chadwick passed. And I was just like, it felt like, I mean, I loved him in it. I've loved Chadwick in everything I've seen him in. And obviously, like, I wasn't watching it, like, knowing that he was going to pass, but, like, his character in it is just, like, so invigorating and inspirational that it made it hurt worse. Hearing the news. And, I mean, everyone is impacted, just, like, the depth that he brought to Black Panther and everything. But Da 5 Bloods was awesome. And then we went right into our Spike Lee joints. And so it was kind of cool to see, again, the Spike Lee-isms and also the cast that Spike Lee frequents in his movies. So, and it's also a view of like Vietnam War veterans that we don't really see in movies because it's not really the glamorous stuff. So that was cool. And then just going through movies that I watched that I rated highly on Letterboxd, I have to throw in Frances Ha by Noah Baumbach. Because after Marriage Story, and we had While We're Young in our podcast, Angie and I realized, you know what, we need to go through and watch a bunch of his movies. And so we were knocking them out as we could. And that one was really awesome. Just the more intimate view of what life is like in New York for young adults was a cool intimate story.
There's not enough movies about young adults in New York. They're very underrepresented.
Definitely.
No, that's one that I keep forgetting about, honestly. And then you've talked about it a lot, off the pod. And it's one that I definitely want to check out. And I keep forgetting that it was Noah Baumbach that directed it. So it's pretty high on my list of things I need to watch.
What do you do?
It's kind of hard to explain.
Because what you do is complicated?
Because I don't really do it.
For sure.
But, and I think it's funny you mentioned, the way you put that, Matt. It's like, oh, we saw these and we're like, oh, got to see other stuff. That was my experience with him too. I think the first thing that I saw from him was Greenberg, and I enjoyed it. Like, I thought it was good, but like, I need to see what else this guy has done. Like, you can tell that he has a very distinct storytelling, skill or ability. It's like, yeah, you're going to attach yourself to this. And we see it in While We're Young. Definitely we see it in Marriage Story. Like he's great. Yeah. He's been really good. I still need to see what's left. He did Kicking and Screaming, I believe. I haven't seen that one. And
Meyerowitz Stories.
Yeah. I have not seen Meyerowitz Stories yet, but I'm sure we'll get around to those.
That one's good.
How about you, Fuzz? Did you have something you saw this year that weren't for the pod that you really liked?
Yeah. It's funny. Like, so I was going through my Letterboxd, and it turns out I only log movies when it's for the pod, with a few exceptions. So, and even still, like, I didn't watch a whole lot of movies outside of the podcast, which is the whole reason we're doing this thing, right? So, for whatever reason, when wasn't doing the podcast, I did a lot of series on Netflix or HBO or whatever. Like I rewatched The Wire. I'm still rewatching The Wire, actually. Watch some documentaries and stuff, because that's the stuff that Alex and I like to watch together. So outside of the podcast, I didn't see a whole lot of new movies, but I did see a couple that I really liked. So first off would have been Uncut Gems. It's like, it's like having a panic attack and enjoying it. It's like having the safest way to have a panic attack. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a panic attack, and Adam Sandler's your panic attack.
For sure. And it was just like, I don't know, it's a great movie. The tone of it, the pace, the intensity.
Intensity?
There you go. I was like,
yeah.
I know I've pulled a few words out on this pod.
The dynamism?
That's not one of them. But yeah, the intensity, and Sandler's really good in it, and it's cool to see Kevin Garnett like that. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah.
And Lakeith was great in it too.
Yeah. No, that was a fun one. I also had Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which isn't my favorite Tarantino movie, but I love Tarantino, so. Anytime he has a movie come out, I'm sure it's going to end up on my list.
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough Brad Pitt in the world. So however many hours they've got of him cruising around in that car, I'll take it.
Exactly. Yep. Release the Tyler cut.
Yeah.
Next up, I had The King of Staten Island. Did you guys watch that one?
I was very interested in it. That you enjoyed it though.
I loved it. Loved it. Yeah. It's really cool. Bill Burr's really good in it.
You make everyone around you feel crazy. People are normal, then they hang out with you, and then they're fucking Jack Nicholson in The Shining or something.
I gotta tell my mom you tried to drown me.
To the above ground pool, you're like fucking 8 feet tall.
I was just gonna say, I feel like I'm always on board for Bill Burr. Mandalorian, Breaking Bad, whatever. Like, give me Bill Burr.
Yeah. He basically is like, yeah, I'm like Bill Burr, but I'm a fireman this time. It's like, but it's great. I don't know, it just works. He's like he fits that role very well.
Yeah.
And Pete Davidson does really great as well. Cool. And then another one was Honey Boy. That one,
I wanted to see that.
Shia, right?
Yeah, that one really surprised me. I watched that one with Alex, and like, I was really impressed, man. I didn't know too much about Shia other than the fact that he was like in Transformers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he had this weird like performance art phase where he was doing weird shit in New York all the time.
Yeah,
that's really all I knew about him. But he's phenomenal.
So
Honey
good.
Boy. And I saw parts of Peanut Butter Falcon, and he seemed to be really good in that too. But I didn't see the whole thing all the way through.
He was great in Peanut Butter Falcon. That was on my honorables for the ones that weren't for the pod. I had kind of a list. I was like,
that was so good.
Peanut Butter Falcon was just wonderful. Like, he was so good in it. And like with Matt and I, our tie is My Cousin Graydon. I always think about Even Stevens, because I feel like we watch that all the time. Like, I loved that show, and so seeing where he came from to where he is now, it's just like,
it's crazy.
Man, he's
so
good.
That's what Honey Boy is about.
Yeah, right. It's like his dad or something.
Stevens with his dad. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's really good. And Shia's he went up on my list considering he wasn't on it at all.
Yeah. That's cool.
He's really good. Really good.
I think it's the best. Yeah.
There was a couple others that I saw. Like, I saw Hustlers, which I liked, but I don't think it would make a favorites of the year list.
I will say it'll make the J-Lo Got Robbed list though. Like, she was
she was
Oscars
great
last year. She was her for Hustlers, Lupita Nyong'o for Us, and Sandler for Uncut Gems. The fact that none of those got nominations floored me. It was like, I would have given them all those Oscars. Like, they were so good in those roles.
For sure.
It was great in Hustlers.
Yeah, I'm sure I saw other movies that I can't remember, but those are the ones I can think of.
Cool. That's awesome. I mean, these are all like some great movies. I think definitely some that we all want to watch. I know Honey Boy's been on my list for a while, so
yeah, you definitely need to see it.
Yeah, I'm excited to check it out.
was the best acting I've ever seen in my whole life.
Like you. Rick fucking Dalton.